Welcome to the Grind to Growth to Greatness podcast. The best and brightest entrepreneurs, CEOs, creators, athletes. We'll talk to them all, and we'll get the good, the bad, and the ugly on how they made it. Decoding the secrets of success. And now your host, Terry Barr.
Welcome back to Grind to Growth to Greatness. I'm your host, Terry Barr, and I have a tremendous guest. This guest is somebody that I met through a friend of mine. We haven't actually met, but I was introduced to by a friend of mine. His name is Ryan Carron. Ryan is a retired commander, naval aviator commander. And I want to just introduce you to a little bit of his history so that you understand where he's come from. But I want to open it up and say, Ryan, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you coming on to our show. And we're excited to hear your story. It is a story of, let's call it tragedy and overcoming tragedy by doing some pretty amazing things as a business owner, and we're going to connect all those dots for you. But Ryan was graduated from the Naval Academy in 1994. He was a pilot. He was a helicopter pilot. He earned his master's from the university or the U.S. Naval War College, international MBA from Thunderbird University in 2011. And then he completed some other schooling as well from Tufts University. He's had 2 tours and ended up his career commanding over 3,600 airmen and women, and just a really illustrious career in the Navy. Very exciting. It'd be a great story in itself, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. And I want you to listen into this story and really, hopefully we can get some little morsels of understanding and how we can approach this very common problem in today's society. So, Ryan, thanks for being on our show. Welcome into season 2. Appreciate you being here.
Terry, no, it's my pleasure, and I look forward to the conversation, and I appreciate the energy.
Thanks very much. So, Ryan, I want you to just give us some context. I want you to bring us into your world a little bit. Tell me about your family. Tell me about where you grew up, mom and dad. How did we get interested, obviously, in the military at some point? But give us some context. Tell us about your history.
So I had a little bit of a gypsy background. Grew up in the Southeast, Northeast, even spent some time in Europe. My parents were divorced growing up. Okay. And that actually probably started my interest in aviation, because I would take these little puddle jumper aircraft between my mom and my dad. Of course, this is before 9/11, and typically, these pilots would get me up into the cockpit. And so it was either that or maybe I saw Top Gun one too many times. But I decided in my formative years growing up in northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area, that I wanted to go to the Naval Academy. And so luckily I got in, spent 4 years at the Naval Academy, and that started off my my career in the military.
That's not an easy thing to do, to get accepted in the military academy. And maybe you could give us a 2-second version of what that's like to get accepted to one of the academies. But the Naval Academy is it's an illustrious place to go. What did you have to do to get into the Naval Academy?
Well, luckily, I think coming from Kentucky, there's not too many Navy bases around there, so the competition wasn't too steep. But I think they were looking for kind of well-rounded potential leaders. And so the way I approached it was to try to be a good student, try to be a good athlete, try to show leadership in other aspects, whether it's through community service, Civil Air Patrol. So I tried to, although I wasn't an outstanding scholar, an outstanding athlete, I tried to be pretty darn good in just about everything I did. And I think somehow I squeaked in.
At what point in your young life, let's call it, did you realize that the Naval Academy was your goal? I mean, I've interviewed a couple folks that one other commander that went to the Naval or went to the Air Force Academy, and another pilot that was that kind of did the backdoor route, but ended up going to the Air Force. At what point did you realize that that was the place for you, and versus some other academy, Air Force or whatever?
I think it was really hammered home through the influence of my grandfather. My grandfather was a World War II vet, spent 4 years deployed overseas. And although he was in the Army Corps of Engineers, he always had a love of flight. And he always had that concept of service and being a leader. And so he had a remarkable influence on my life. And, I saw that as a good pathway. And it just so happenstance that a good friend of mine's father was a blue and gold officer. And he introduced me to the Navy and the range of options that the Navy offered versus some of the other academies, which I liked. If I couldn't be an aviator, then there were a lot of other options. I could be a Marine. I could go special operations. I could drive ships, submarines. And being an 18-year-old, not quite sure of what I wanted to do. I knew I kind of wanted to go that route of service, but I didn't know the particular pathway. I liked the options that the Naval Academy had.
Okay. Let me back up. Just you made a comment, and for those that may not, I don't have a military background, so a lot of the jargon and things that I hear, I'm not 100% sure what they mean, but what is a blue and gold officer for those that may not know?
So a blue and gold officer helps potential recruits go to the Naval Academy. They help chart those pathways. So typically that involves sitting down, setting expectations, helping with applications, helping with interviews, because you have to get either a senator or a congressman's endorsement. So they're kind of like they help you seek your path.
Yeah, like a mentor, like a focused mentor that really knows that path and how to get you there.
Sure.
Okay. So you spent a lot of time in the military. You did a lot of wonderful times, and I don't want to skip over any of it. I know it's, we're kind of getting to the next story, but you had about, I assume what I read was about 16 or 18 years in the Navy. Is that right?
So after I graduated, I had a 26-year career.
26. Okay.
Yeah. Mostly spent in naval aviation, but a good chunk also spent with special operations. So I deployed, I was East Coast, West Coast, 4 deployed out of Italy and Guam. So got a lot of great exposure to different cultures and seeing the world, and got to deploy in a wartime environment a few times, going to Iraq, 3 deployments. So it really showed me a lot of different environments, different ways of leadership, and a lot of good exposure.
Yeah, that sounds like it. It sounds like for anybody's career, that's a lot to bite off. It's a lot to chew. So I want to kind of connect the dots to what really brings us here. I have a friend that she's in the medical field, and she happened to see you give a talk at one of her conferences and really got me interested in what your story was. But at some point in your career in the Navy, you got married to your wife, Catherine, and everything was clicking pretty well with your career. You're making it to the highest level of your industry, if you will, call it an industry. And then something happened in your life and your wife's life that really kind of changed the course of what you would. A couple things happened, but this one in particular happened to kind of change the course of your wife and yours life. And I'd love for you to just kind of tell us what happened and when in your career that happened, and really break that down for us. It's tragedy, and for all you listeners out there, if you're, I want you to be sensitive to this story and understand that this is something that happens in our world every day, and Mr. Carron is trying to do his best to make some changes here. So, Ryan, tell us what happened when it comes to your wife and your son, Kenny.
Yeah, sure. So in 2012, I had just gotten done with a very busy tour. I was commanding officer of one of the Navy's largest helicopter squadrons, and luckily had done well and was kind of on the path for future challenge. And we were assigned to an area for a little bit of an opportunity to catch back up with life. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And I had gotten married to the love of my life, Catherine, and we shortly thereafter found out we were pregnant, and we were going to have a boy. We named him Kenny after my grandfather, who I mentioned previously.
Right.
And I thought we had the world. Everything was clicking. Good assignment, catching back up with life, just married. And here we are going to have a boy named after my grandfather. It was, the stars were aligning.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my wife kept very good care of herself. She was a former college athlete. We went in for a planned induction. And we were assured everything was completely normal. But unbeknownst to us, things would not transpire to be normal. This planned induction, we got checked in on a Saturday. Things weren't progressing as we thought. And at approximately 8 o'clock at night, our obstetrician did a procedure called artificial rupture of the membranes, which helps induce labor.
Right.
And my wife said she was in intense pain. She said, I feel like I've been stabbed. And that really started to open my eyes that things weren't quite normal. They weren't quite all right, as we were being assured. But yet we were told everything was good. Until a few moments later, when my wife got up to clean herself with the assistance of a nurse, and there was bright red blood. And when they went to put her back in the bed, there was no heartbeat. The obstetrician, unbeknownst to us, had left the hospital. And so it took a while before we could actually get care. And when they did, it was an emergency C-section. Our son was born without a heartbeat. After about 30 minutes of resuscitative efforts, they managed to get a weak heartbeat, which eventually became a very strong heartbeat and gave us a lot of hope. Yeah. About 2 o'clock in the morning, we were transferred to another hospital that had a NICU. And we were there for the next 5 days. And we were there caring for each other, caring for our little baby boy. And at the end of those 5 days, they did what was called a cooling procedure over those 5 days to attempt to stabilize him and to try to get some brain activity. And unfortunately, he was declared brain dead. And at that time, the veil had been completely lifted, and we realized that we needed to question the system. And so I still remember the doctor questioning me. She's like, so at this point, we are going to unhook everything, and your little, you'll have one final moment with your son, and that'll be it. And I said, I talked to my wife, and we said, this is ridiculous. He's got a strong heart. He's got a viable body. We'd like to pursue organ donation. And she looked at us kind of puzzled and said, are you sure? We usually don't do this. And I'm like, yeah, there's got to be some good out of this horrific event. And because we learned to question, and because we push back, and because this doctor became a great advocate for us, Kenny became one of the first neonate donors in this area, and potentially paved the path for others. And his heart is alive today, beating in a little girl. So, and that really kind of opened my eyes to healthcare, and turned the page on my desire to serve in a different capacity, pursuing another mission.
So let me ask you a couple questions about that period of time. I know there was a lot of red flags from what I read in a couple of the articles that I read, and those began to kind of build up over time, and you kind of laid them out in the article that I read and what the red flags were. At what point, I mean, not coming from a medical background, at what point did you say, something's not right here, and what's happening seems to be one step behind, every step was kind of felt like it was trying to catch up to reality there. At what point did you realize, this is not right?
So I guess looking back, I always had that kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, a spidey sense.
Yeah.
Like there was a bias that everything was going to be completely normal. Whereas as a naval aviator, we have the completely different bias. We always expect something's going to go wrong, right? We're always on alert. We're always testing the crew. And I think because of that, we have become a high reliability organization. We've fostered that culture of double checks and, making sure that everything is going to be fine, because we assume that it's most likely not.
Yeah.
But it was really hammered home when we had an interview with the chief medical officer of this hospital. And I said, please just tell me there were some lessons learned on this. And he said, sorry, sometimes things just happen. And for me, that kind of set me off on the path of like an aircraft mishap investigation.
Sure, yeah.
I secured the scene. I got all the records. I looked through everything. I was part of a lot of interviews. And I realized there was a lot going on here behind the scenes. There was teamwork issues. There were procedural compliance issues. The lack of actually looking into what's called a sentinel event, or the equivalent of an aircraft mishap in the inadvertent death of a patient.
Yeah.
And the fact they weren't getting any lessons learned, because I'll tell you, having investigated a lot of aircraft mishaps, even when everything goes right, there's always something you can learn.
Yeah.
Because it just gives you an opportunity to pause, examine the system, and say, hey, what can we do better? And so when I had this person who is in an elevated position of leadership say, sorry, sometimes things just happen.
Yeah.
That did not sound well.
Yeah, it just sounds, and when I read your story, and there's like, back at that point, there's estimated 268 of these accidents, if you will, a day, and now it's reported to be probably 3 or 4 times that, if everything is right, what we're reading and what the research says. I thought to myself, that comment you made, that the medical officer made to you, sometimes things just happen. It just felt like there's just kind of a sweeping under the rug to help things go away because you can't do anything about it. And I wonder to myself, I guess, out of those 650 to 700 deaths per day mistake, is it just kind of, is that the medical society or the medical industry's way of just saying, hey, these are going to happen, we're going to sweep them under? How do you make changes at such a broad basis in a medical community like ours? How do you make changes that make sense? And I know that's what you're doing, and we're going to talk about that, but how do you, from these individual lives being lost by mistakes, to how do we correct it?
Well, it takes, in my opinion, it takes bold leadership. In our case, I don't know if it was just happenstance, but the president of the hospital and the chief medical officer were let go shortly after our event. And being part of the new leadership, the new chief medical officer, the new president that came in, they allowed me to talk to the hospital, and they have a grand rounds in memory of our son every year. And that really, I saw progress based on that. You had leaders who embraced outside perspective.
Right.
They were involved. They got into the grassroots of the culture, and they affected change.
You think, obviously you want that to happen and you're glad it happened regardless of the reason, but we're in such a litigious society these days. Is the threat of litigation something that pushes change, or just the fact that you approached it differently than others approached it? How do you feel? Why do you think that happened in this particular case? Here's a guy like yourself that is a leader way up the chain in the Navy and knows what leadership is. Was that part of the pressure that was put on him, or was there a reaction to a legal threat? How do you feel like it made the change that it did?
I think it's a product of the opening of information. Historically, a person dying in a hospital doesn't really hit the radar. It's just a number.
Right.
But nowadays, information is out there. Statistics are out there. You've got some awesome doctors and nurses holding things together, being superhumans in a very challenging system. And they are also affecting change.
Yeah.
And you've got these young, empowered leaders who are demanding it. And the environment is changing so that healthcare has to change.
Yeah, that's a big thing in our society right now. I follow a doctor. I don't know if you know Casey Means. She's she's a doctor she's awesome. I like to follow. I loved I loved her book. I've read it a couple different times and listened to her speak about medicine, and we're in this this era that we're treating the symptoms versus trying to heal the wounds. And yours is a little different, obviously. And you bring something different to the solution. So I'd like you to talk to us about what you're bringing, what solutions you're bringing and helping to bring, especially in your local area and your local hospitals. How are you approaching that?
Yeah, sure. So I founded a very small startup called Medtops, and it's based on naval aviation principles of standardization and checklists.
And what does that
And
mean in layman's terms? Tell us what that means in layman's terms.
in layman's terms, so we approach things in three different ways. First of all, we love our patients, we love our providers, and we believe our purpose is connecting people to high reliability. So what we try to do is translate systems that keep us safe in the aircraft that have been tried and true in military aviation that we've had to adopt based on killing people and twisting metal.
Right.
And we try to translate that for healthcare. And so through public speaking, like I got to engage with your friend,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
targeted consulting, and we also have some electronic checklist applications. So we will go in and we will talk not only to leadership, but the actual end users and see what do they need to reduce the variables in what they are doing, whether it's checking in a patient, doing a complex procedure of a surgery, and we'll boil that down into a checklist. And I tell you what, the young population in healthcare, they love it.
Yeah. Well, you know, my mom's a nurse. Now, she's not nursing anymore, but, you know, I imagine, and you can talk to this, you're about to say it, I interrupted, apologize, but at the caregiver level, I imagine that's got to be a real positive thing for the people that are at the caregiver level, so that they're not making mistakes. You know, these nurses work 12, doctors work 12, 14-hour shifts. And, you know, I'm sure that errors happen. I imagine these type of corrections list and checklist are a good thing. And are you getting good feedback? Are you getting, you know, at the highest levels, are people getting on board with what you have to offer?
Sure thing. Yeah. You know, the difficult part is actually getting some of the senior folks to actually change and use it.
Why is that? Tell me why you think that is.
Well, I think they're very much like military aviation was back pre-World War II.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people don't realize that pilots were highly trained professionals who didn't used to think they needed checklists because it was a profession and an art. And they were endowed to be pilots. You don't need these simple things called checklists. Well, it took a very famous incident where they were showcasing the B-17, and one of the military's top test pilots crashed that aircraft because he forgot a very simple step.
Oh boy!
And that started the whole role of checklists in military aviation. And so I think we're kind of at that stage in healthcare.
Yeah.
You got some really astute leaders who are pushing this change. There's a great book called Checklist Manifesto by Dr. Atul Gawande. There's minor checklists that are seeping in, like a surgical checklist, central line checklist, and they're very simple. But the ability to reduce steps and make sure that they get done, like an antibiotic gets administered 30 minutes before surgery.
Yeah.
You know, it's very akin to me going out and flying a search and rescue mission. If I don't remember to turn on the pump that activates my rescue hoist, all the other stuff doesn't work.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
It surprises me, though, Ryan. It surprises me that in 2024, with all the advances we have and all the money we spend on medical device, medical, you know, obviously you can talk about the pharma forever, but, you know, it surprises me that we're just getting to a point where leadership says, yeah, we make too many mistakes. We need to start implementing some basic stuff. Why do you think it's taken until 2024 to get to this point? I mean, you said we're there pretty much.
Well, I think somebody once said, you know, well, we're out of money. Now we got to think. And I think this is causing a lot of people to open up their eyes and not only do things because it's the right thing to do,
Yeah.
but it's about doing things right.
Yeah.
And so, it is the right thing to do for patients and providers to do everything efficiently and make sure they get all the resources they need.
Right.
But it's also about doing things right to make sure the hospital system is operating at a profit.
Yeah.
And you're looking around right now, and a lot of hospital systems aren't.
It's the truth. It's for a lot of different reasons. It seems like simple efficiencies and the things that you're providing and your company's providing would be kind of a no-brainer to implement. And I'm sure they're not cheap, but I also know that they're probably simplistic in their nature and are reminders of every step of the way. Here's how to be efficient. Here's how to avoid, making a big mistake. Is that something you're finding that, the people that are getting on board or people that are accepting this type of, are they on board for those reasons or tell me why they come to you?
Yeah, no, so we get people who are embracing change that reach out to us. And then also the biggest thing we do though, is we get peer reviewed. And when somebody speaks highly of our product, somebody who's within the healthcare circle, that's the best advertising we get. And then just getting people to use the product, once they see how checklists make their lives easier and make the patient provider experience so much better in a teamwork environment, they love it. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's interesting. What's your success so far? I know that you're successful with the hospital that your son was treated in. That's an interesting story in itself, how you were invited back to the hospital after some adjustments in staff were made. Where do you see yourself? Are you local at this point, or are you really spreading throughout the country? Because I wasn't really able to find a lot of information on that.
Sure. No, all our products are tailored to a particular hospital system or clinic or hospital, so they're proprietary. Right. So you're not going to see things pervade on the App Store. But the
sure.
But the feedback we get is very positive. And once people use a particular checklist for, say, checking in a patient and briefing a patient, all of a sudden they see the applicability and they're like, hey, can we use that in a surgical setting? And I'll tell you, Terry, after this last year and a half, I was in the battle for cancer. Yeah. And so I got a pretty good sabbatical in the healthcare industry. Yeah. And I saw how needed from the ground roots level checklists were, and standardization, and making things as easy as they can be and solving the variables that can be solved. Yeah. For the crazy environment that healthcare is.
Yeah, my dad is going through that right now, Ryan, and he has been to a couple different, 2 or 3 different hospitals, and a couple of them within the same system. And he said the difference between just the simplicity of care in one versus another is it's unbelievable. And so I know it's an expensive fix, and I'm guessing they're working on it because it's inside the same system. But he speaks. He's 80 years old. He speaks to it. It's so easy for me to see my tests. It's so easy for me to make appointments. And I'm sure that that's all part of what you're doing, these checklists to get people through the system in an efficient way. And I see it from a personal standpoint, how it can be a train wreck if you're not careful. So that's.
Yeah. The other aspect too is it's not just sprinkling on a piece of technology. You have to work with the end users to make sure the technology is going to be useful. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not developing with that in mind, for the end user, for the patients, for the providers, and as a former operator who's been who's had that all over the place in the Navy.
Right. Yeah.
In my last flying tour, I learned to fly a drone, and I'll tell you, as opposed to flying the helicopter, this drone was developed almost in a vacuum by engineers, super smart technicians, but not for pilots. Wow. And so we had to like go back and like, okay, you got to pilot proof a few of these steps, right? To make sure it's efficient, that we can actually use this drone in an operational environment. So it's tying in that operator interface. That I think is really key. Whenever you bring in any piece of technology into a very busy environment, whether it's naval aviation or healthcare, it's very similar.
Yeah, that's something. It seems so vast. That the job seems so vast and large. How long does it take you to implement? From soup to nuts, if you get somebody coming in, a hospital coming to you and say, hey, we want to implement some of your technology, how long does that process take you?
So that's the good thing. And luckily my partner is the coder. Everything's in-house.
Okay. All right.
And within a week we can get a basic checklist out, based on the requirements that are presented to us. And we iterate off that. So we give them an 80% solution, and we let them chew on it. What's good, what's bad, what's other, and then we make it better. Maybe I spent too much time in special operations, but I really looked up to Admiral McRaven, General McChrystal, and their basic premise was, don't wait for 100% solution. Give me an 80% solution. Let's go out. Let's operate. Let's get the feedback. We'll iterate. We'll improve it, and we'll do it again.
Yeah.
Because if you wait for 100% solution, you'll never get it.
You'll never do it. Yeah, you'll never do it. So I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but generally speaking, it sounds like your son Kenny was really the impetus for you and your wife to really make a change and a kind of a go in a different direction. How is your wife? I know you have 2 other children now. Congratulations. And those young men, Rory and Grady. But how's your wife and how's she dealt with this over the past few years? And does she have any part of your business, and what does she bring to the table for Medtops?
So Catherine, once again, is the love of my life. We all process things in different ways.
Sure.
I don't think you ever get over losing a child. And so that's always going to be in the back of our mind. Sure. We're always going to remember Kenny. He is, like you said, he's my North Star for this mission change.
Yeah.
But we have Rory and Grady. Rory's 10, Grady's 6. The insurgency is strong in our house.
Yeah.
They are very busy boys, and they keep us on our toes all the time.
Yeah.
And they are a very pleasant distraction.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think God works in mysterious ways, and it's nice that He's given you 2 boys to remind you that you're on duty every day, and yet don't let you forget, your mission in the past. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So tell me what's next for Medtops. What's next for Ryan Carron and the family? Tell me where you're headed. Obviously, you're working hard at this new venture, this new mission. But tell me what's next. What's on their plate?
So for Medtops, my partner and I are, we're always looking to innovate. And one of my experiences going through this head and neck surgery for cancer.
Yeah.
I realized that as I was seeing different specialists and I was getting access to different resources, there was no script, there was no playbook, and it was all oral tradition based on the person or the encounter that I had. And so, as a pilot, that totally unnerved me. Like, we always take off with a flight plan, right?
Right.
And so we might not actually fly to that exact flight plan, but it gives us, once again, an 80% solution and a kind of an expectation and a map of resources along the way.
Yeah.
And so for Medtops, that's what we're doing. For complex procedures, we're developing what's called a flight plan for healthcare. And that maps everything from diagnosis to potential cure, all the resources that you should encounter along the way, or at least a 90% solution, so that it's not an oral tradition. There's a script that nurse navigators actually have a resource to tie into, to reference, and to compare with throughout the hospital, throughout hospital systems. And I think it's got a lot of potential to do some very good in healthcare. And I'm really, really excited about getting this out there.
Yeah. Are you implementing AI with that? Is that something that, I don't know how you do, I don't know how you put together flight plans for all the different things that you run into, and maybe they're similar in every case, but do you implement AI to help you with that process?
Yes, we do. We used a closed loop AI that can reference previous medical records, draw out relative resources. So you're not starting from a totally grassroots effort.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is, talking to patients, talking to providers, making sure things get written down so there's a basic flight plan in place.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it's very cutting edge for. It seems like it should have happened, 50 years ago, but it's cutting edge thought, and it's interesting how you come out of one industry into another, and you're implementing those checklists. I just think it's incredible to think about. But one of the questions I have for you, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but one of the questions I have for you, there's a lot of parents out there, there's a lot of people out there, if you will, that are maybe not as educated in medicine or educated in leadership or some of those things that, I go to a hospital and I get diagnosed or I have a problem. What should I be thinking about? What advice would you be giving to parents, to people that go into the medical, whether it's a hospital or a doctor? Give me some basic advice that you would pass along to parents and people in general.
Yeah, sure. So when I got diagnosed with cancer, there was a lot of fumbling through the darkness. I made a lot of mistakes. But one of the things I did right eventually was I got a coach. I got a cancer coach. I got somebody who had walked a similar path and was, just a few blocks ahead of me.
Right.
And my cancer coach, she was fantastic. She had cured herself of stage 4 melanoma. And head and neck cancer, very similar. And I leveraged her experience.
Yeah. So you did some pretty interesting. You went international and got some international advice and some homeopathic advice and some other things that I read. Talk to me about that. Was that part of your journey coming from your cancer coach?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
But I had already kind of, unfortunately, losing Kenny taught me to question the system.
Yeah.
So I was looking outside, and I realized that in the United States we have some great resources, but it's a very narrow standard of care.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of resources that are available outside of the United States. that could potentially be beneficial. They might not have been through the regular FDA approval process. But I went to Mexico 2 times and got some infusions, some hyperbaric oxygen, some things that are available also in Germany or Japan, and most likely saved my life.
How do you? We all want to put trust in something. You know, we all want to put trust in. I'll go to my doctor. I want to trust my doctor. I'll go to the hospital. I want to trust those people that are, you know, at what's the line between trust and question?
So I look at it this way, like in the military, in naval aviation, we have 18, 19, 20-year-old kids doing surgery on aircraft every single day. We put a lot of trust in them. Yeah. But we also verify. There is a process where one person does the work, one person does the quality assurance check to make sure the work is done, and then even another person signs off that aircraft is safe for flight. So you got to trust but verify, in my opinion. You know, everybody's a human out there. Right. Everybody makes mistakes. Sure. And if you're not making that quality assurance check yourself and taking ownership as being part of the team in your healthcare journey, you got to help lead that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are fearful. My dad is he's not a wilting guy. He's going to take people to task for, you know, what they tell him. But there are a lot of people out there that aren't like that, you know, and they go and they say, oh, okay, I'll do whatever and let me know. And, you know, and I think that's a struggle. And not until recently, over the last 10 years, do I realize, you know, I love America. But there are other things that out there in so many different areas that other countries or societies offer. I'm not sure that everybody can afford to get those. And so I'm kind of looking for that, you know, what is the magical line we have to walk with trust and, you know, can the average person trust and verify, you know, and I'm not sure that's totally possible, I suppose, with a lot of society. And I'm not sure there's an easy answer for that though, either.
No, you bring up a good point about equity, and it's, you know, luckily I had the means to go travel internationally to take some naturopathic modalities in play that's not covered by insurance. Right.
And good for you. That's totally great. I mean, I think it's wonderful. Yeah. I'm kind of wondering out loud for others about trusting and verifying, because I like your comment on trust and verify. I'm just not sure everybody can do that.
But even within the insurance system, you can get, you'd be surprised. Like at the university hospital that I got my cancer treatment at, they had an integrated doctor. And one of my nurses said, "Hey, Ryan, I know you're into some of this crazy alternative stuff. Yeah. Would you be interested in talking to this integrative doc?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so these resources are coming into play even in the conventional healthcare system because they work. Yeah. And patients are demanding it. And it's another means for the hospital system to collect revenue. And
that's true.
So just being able to look around, even within the hospital system that you're assigned to, or, you know, look for another doctor that your insurance payer will provide, just as a second check or a third check, until you're comfortable. Because I think confidence too is also a big thing in your cure.
You bet.
If you're just going in there fearful and at the end of somebody else's, you know, rope, you know, you're not in a very good position to heal your own self. So
just to use my dad as an example, you know, he was not excited about one of the systems he was in, didn't get the care he thought he should have, whether he knew what that was or not. He just didn't feel comfortable. But the second system that he got in is 3 hours away, and the doc is well renowned in that area. And before it was over, he was totally confident. And the difference between him emotionally in the first system and the second system was huge. It was just huge. We're feeling good about it. We're feeling good about the care we're getting. We're confident. We think he knows what he's talking about. And I think that's really good advice that you're given. Work on it, ask questions until you feel comfortable, because you need all of that confidence and all of that positive thinking, if you will, going into a battle in some cases. And that's true in any part of life, I think.
The other tip I will give too is never go into it alone. Always go in with an advocate. No matter how confident you think you are. Luckily for a lot of my treatments, I had my best friend. I was back in my hometown of Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati.
Okay.
And I was going through my cancer journey.
Yeah.
And my best friend, my aunt and uncle, somebody would be there with me.
Yeah.
And so there was, once again, there was a second set of ears, listening, writing things down, asking different questions, helping me verify when I was sometimes in a state of shock.
Sure.
I'm used to being a leader, but yet I was not in a leadership position there. But having somebody who is disassociated, who could calmly ask those questions, who could help remember certain things, was huge.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's really good advice. Well, I want to kind of tie everything up. I know that your journey has been lots of highs and a few lows, especially, obviously your cancer and of course your son, Kenny. I want to thank you for being willing to tell those stories kind of in part and pull them all together. And the reason I do this podcast is so people can get information from people like you that have had these different types of journeys. And, your tragedy in your life led to something that's making a difference in others. And I think that's a wonderful legacy to leave, for Kenny to leave, your family and then the greater area that you serve in. So I want to thank you for that. And thanks for coming on our show.
Terry, it was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for this opportunity. If you or anybody else would like to reach out to me, please do so.
Yeah, where can we do that?
Yeah, it's so the website's www.medtops.com.
Okay.
And all our contact info is there. Send me a note, send me an email, whatever it takes. Happy to help.
That's great. I'll put that in the notes for the show so that people can look that up and hopefully you won't get inundated, but hopefully somebody can find obviously find some information that they're looking for through you. So I appreciate that. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure, Terry. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for tuning in to Grind to Growth to Greatness. Sorry about the camera issue. I'm not sure what happened there, but the great interview with Ryan, and we were excited to have him on. So tune in next time for our next guest. Welcome to season 2. We'll see you later. Thanks, Ryan.
You've been listening to the Grind to Growth to Greatness podcast. Our passion is to talk to the brightest entrepreneurs, CEOs, creators, athletes, anyone who's made it, and dive into their struggles, their successes, and their secrets. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Grind to Growth to Greatness. See you next time.